Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. Thank you for tuning in again because we're grateful that you're here. Today's show, I'm sure, is going to help you on your journey to freedom, whatever that looks like for you, whatever goals you have before you, the dreams in your heart. We want to help you get there one step at a time. And we're excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking with a very special guest who's going to help us think a little bit differently, a little bit out the box. It's something that we all need to understand and grasp, a concept that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't, but you all need to be aware of. We're going to be talking with Vince Carter. He is the founder of CFO at Home, and he's going to talk about that with us. How do we become a CFO of our homes, of our households, and steward all that we have well, so that we can build wealth, so that we can get out of debt, so that we can leave a legacy? All of the above are things that you should be striving for. And I think our special guest today is going to help you get that much closer to doing that. Well, let's not delay this any further. Let's get Vince on so we can hear his wisdom and his advice on the matter. Hey, Vince, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Talent, thanks so much for having me on today.
We're excited to have you on. We're excited about this concept that you've been touting all across the world. But before we get into your mission and what you want us to get a hold of, can you say hello to those who are being introduced to you for the very first time, and then kind of let them know what you are all about?
All right. So first of all, hello to the His and Her Money audience. Tell you a little bit about myself and my background. I host a podcast also called CFO at Home. We have about 90 episodes in the can right now. We've been doing it since mid-2000. And the real mission of CFO at Home is to help individuals, like you said, think a little bit differently about their finances. And it's particularly focused towards that person. The theory is in every household, there's a person who ends up taking that financial lead. Maybe they're just more interested in finances, and maybe they're a money nerd like myself, or maybe it just kind of falls to them and they see that responsibility. But regardless, there usually ends up being that one person who has that responsibility. And CFO at Home is for that person. It's all about financial fundamentals that person needs to understand. And at the same time, a lot of it's also relationship oriented, because in order to bring harmony in the household in terms of finances, it's a skill. It's just like anything else. It's just like any relationship skill or marriage skill. So what we try to do is we try to combine those two sets of skills where you can have the basic financial knowledge, but also the relationships, the relation skills.
So how did this get started in your own life? How did you become the CFO at Home, and how did that change the way things were trending at your house?
All right. I became the CFO at Home. It was the school of hard knocks. So I am a money nerd. So I kind of bought that skill set into my marriage. My wife and I will be celebrating our 29th anniversary in October. So I've been practicing this. Thank you. I've been practicing this for a while, and I have seen myself at my worst early on, making every mistake in the book in terms of really more that relational part. I've always been so into the numbers that was not a problem for me, but the whole skill of getting the whole household on the same page and leading and truly leading your family in terms of hidden financial goals, that's something that I have just learned the hard way over the years. And one of the things I hope to do with the podcast is to catch people and really help them not to learn the way I did. So if you can learn from my mistakes, if you can learn from the advice of my guest, make it a little easier on yourself than the way I did it.
Now, some people may know that acronym CFO. Some people may not. What is a CFO, and why should we strive to become that for our families?
Okay, a CFO in a corporation is the chief financial officer. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about C-suite executives. I mean, there are CEOs and CMOs and the CFO. And usually within a corporation, the CFO is the person who they're not involved in operations. They're not involved in operational parts of the business. They are really in charge of the financial aspects of that business. So the CEO relies on them, the COO relies on them. They're just part of that C-suite team that manages the company. So to kind of bring that down to the level of the household, uh, at least in my household, we play parts. I call myself the CFO, but if I'm the CFO, my wife is the COO. She operates the household. So CFO is just a way of looking at, we all play roles in our relationships and our homes. It's just a way of saying, hey, this person is the CFO of the home. This person is the chief financial officer. So this is the person who really takes care of that part of life, oversees that part of our life, or maybe somebody else, the other partner, is running the household and doing other things.
So how do we figure that out if that's us or not? For you, it kind of made sense because you are a quote unquote money nerd already. What if there's two people in a relationship? Well, neither one of them is a money nerd. What about the single person out there who's the only person in the equation? Like, what if somebody's listening? Like, well, I'm not a money nerd. I know I need to get my money together, but the money conversation, whether that's with a spouse or a significant other or with even yourself, can be challenging and not always fun. So how do we identify who the CFO should be? And what about those other scenarios? What do you think?
Okay. Well, there are a couple of hints here. First of all, if you're single, it's you, whether you want it to be or not. And I would have to say that a good hint is if you're listening to His and Her Money, you may not be a money nerd, but you have an awareness of the fact that you have a desire to have a better financial life. So you don't necessarily have to be a money nerd, but it's kind of one of those things that if you're even thinking about this and you're concerned about your financial future, you look to your partner and they're not concerned with it, congratulations, it's you. And what we try to emphasize on the podcast is if you come to that realization, that doesn't mean you have to become a money nerd. There are just certain basic things that you need to understand and a certain role that you need to step into in your household if you're going to be successful in that area. So yeah. I mean, if you're interested and you're asking yourself that question, I wonder which one of us is the CFO. It's probably you.
Now, how do we begin this journey? How did you and your wife begin this journey? Because you said because you were the money person, it kind of made sense for you to kind of take on that role. But what did that initial conversation look like? How does one approach their significant other or begin this journey on their own? What is the starting line?
Okay, well, let me start with a very quick cautionary tale because, my early marriage again was what not to do. Um, we didn't talk a lot about money before we got married. Probably the first real significant money conversation we had was over debt. And I did find out that my wife had a certain amount of debt that she brought into the marriage. Not a significant amount, but I was always kind of absolute zero. We don't carry balance on credit cards. If we use a credit card, we pay it off every month thing. So the very idea that there was a balance on a credit card, I didn't react well. So that's what you don't do. I think one of the things I've learned the most in the podcast is the importance of understanding your partner's money story, their money background. So if you're looking to start a conversation, if you are interested in terms of kind of tightening up the money game within your house, I think the first thing you have to do is set the stage with just a simple conversation so you can understand your partner's money past and they can understand yours, because chances are you're going to be coming at this conversation with two different thoughts. We all think about money differently. We grew up in our households, it was all thought about differently. The first thing is to just get all that out on the table so I can understand and respect the way you think about money. You can understand and respect the way I think about money. And then we go forward from there.
Nice. Now, what if that conversation, that initial one, doesn't go well? What if there's an attempt there to have this conversation, and because of whatever, it could be past trauma around finances, seeing some things the way you grew up, which inform the way that you handle money, and being intimidated because maybe my knowledge isn't where your knowledge is when it comes to money. There's so many different ways that that conversation can go left. And for some, they give up. I tried, but they're just not going to get it. What's the point of me putting this energy for it? You've been doing this a while. If you've bumped up against that with some the couples that you've helped, what's some ways to cope with that and not give up and get back in the fight?
Well, one way is when a conversation goes upside down like that, there's typically a reason. So if you're the person who initiated the conversation and it went upside down, I mean, step back and think about exactly where it went off the rails. Chances are it started as a conversation, and at some point it took a hard turn left and it went down the alley. That's an indication maybe of where your partner does have some financial hurt, some financial pain. And even though you didn't have a wonderful conversation where everybody ended up smiling at the end, you just learned something about your spouse. You just learned something about your partner. And even if you don't know the details of that hurt, you've got some data that if you really stop and think about it, it's like, well, the conversation was going fine until we started talking about, you know, her father and the way her father thought about money. And then then the whole thing went to crap, or her mother and that kind of thing. And that kind of indicates maybe a place of hurt in their past. So maybe give it a little healing time, approach the conversation again with some sensitivity around that area. It can also be an indication at some point that if it goes on long enough, you may need a third party involved to facilitate the conversation. But I would try those things first, just kind of analyze where it went left and learn from that.
And what's your advice on finding balance in the voices, being both voices, if there's two people being heard? Because our dynamic is similar to you all's, but reversed. So Ty's the money nerd when we started out, and I was the free spirit. I'm the one that brought the debt into the marriage, and she was the one who never had debt. And so the mistake that we made year one, not year one, but the first couple months, was what sounded like a good idea on the surface was actually a very terrible idea. So we said to each other, I said, Ty, since you're the one that's really good with this, you set it up, you let me know, what the plan is, and then let me know what I can spend and what I can't spend, and we'll just go with that. And so it sounded good on the surface because Ty had, and from a personal level, always been good with money. She had a degree in finance and she worked in finance. So it made sense for her to take the lead. But the problem was when she took the lead, I had no part. I played zero role. So she was doing all the work and she would say, here's how I set it up. Here's what you can spend. Now I knew how much I made. I'm like, this is all I can spend. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't involved in the crafting of the plan. I wasn't looking at, outcome and expenses. I wasn't looking at, minimum payments on debt and things like that. And because I played 0% role and she played 100% role, it was an imbalance, and it caused frustration and it caused tension. So I think it's important that no matter if you're the quote CFO or the COO, as you mentioned, your both voices are key to making this thing work. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, so to go back to that CFO, COO analogy a bit, uh, when things really turned for me was when I realized in my CFO role that really at the heart of it, if my wife is operating the household, then it's my responsibility. I'm really serving her in terms of running the household. So we have these roles. So defining the roles is one thing, but then defining how the roles fit together is another. What you were talking about is kind of the classic, you're good with money, you take care of that, honey, type thing, which to me is almost like, you have kids, and it's like, you're good with kids. You take care of those. I'm going to stay out of that. No, everybody has to have a part in every aspect of the relationship just to feel included. So I challenge people who say, hey, and my partner's good with money, they take care of that. You may not be, Dr. Spreadsheet or anything. You may not be a person who likes to play with numbers, but this whole finance thing is really about life goals as much as it is anything else. If you have an interest in your life goals, if you have an interest in your family having any kind of goals, whether that's leaving a legacy or maybe you want to own a business or you want to have a certain retirement lifestyle, if you have any of that, then you're in the game. Congratulations. And it's just a matter of finding your role. So, yeah, it's very important for each partner to find a role, even if it's not the, kind of traditional, I'm going to sit down and work in a spreadsheet for 3 hours type of thing.
Yeah. Now, once we're there, we agree. You're the CFO. I'm CEO, whatever role I want to use. What types of conversations should we be having? What type of strategies or situations in our financial world should we be taking a look at?
I think that really all starts with goals. I mean, so many times I think we end up starting backwards with these things. It's like, okay, we need to, tighten up on our finances. What's this, $5 coffee every day all about? And we start scrutinizing expenses and maybe applying our own value system to expenses. Where if we kind of start, I forget the Stephen Covey thing, the beginning with the end in mind.
Yep, the 7 habits of highly effective people.
I really like that approach in terms of finances because, again, at the end of the day, money's not about money, or it shouldn't be about money. It should be about uh, accomplishing certain things in life. And that's what we can all agree on. So, finding those common goals to me is step number one. And once we define those common goals and we work backwards, and the ultimate part of working backwards may be, we need to scrutinize what we're spending, but we're coming at it from a place of commonality. So I think the first thing, once you make that decision, is really to make that connection between your life goals and your finances.
For some people, it's hard to dream. Their brain is full of the responsibilities that they have in the here and now, which kind of at times can put a cap on what I want in the future because I'm so consumed with the hustle and the bustle of the right now. So when we sit down and we try to come up with goals and dreams and aspirations, how do we make sure that we don't limit ourselves about what we see in the future based on what we see in our present?
I think for some people that can be a process because, like you said, I mean, we're all kind of, you know, based on our past conditioning. And it's funny how different people can come from the same conditioning and have a totally different outcome. I mean, if, you grew up, you know, poor, what we'll just say for uh, simplicity, and I grew up in those same conditions. We both grew up in an environment that society would call poor. I may look at that and decide, hey, this is my life, this is how people live, and I'm kind of stuck there. I mean, I may see a little upside, but I can't dream. You may look at that same situation and find from it kind of an audacity of dreaming. I mean, you may go to the different, in an entirely different direction. It's like, I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to achieve that. I'm going to achieve the other. And again, it kind of goes back to, particularly if you're talking about couples, and I'm speaking in generalities here, but Generally speaking, one person has a little bit more of that dreamer in them than the other. So I think as much as anything else, it's at least let the upside of your dreams as a couple or as a family be limited by that person who has the larger set of dreams. I think that really kind of helps to lift you out of it. Now, if you're a single person, I think it's really more about the people that you surround yourself with. So if you're single and you find yourself stuck in in that thought process, you probably need to surround yourself with a different set of people. I mean, because on some level, I think we all want more, whatever that means, to the individual. I mean, if you're single, look at the group of friends you have, look at the people that you're hanging around, look at the people you spend time with, and try to spend time with people who've achieved, something in your mind that's audacious.
Nice. Now, as a CFO in a company in the corporate America environment, there's regular meetings and reports given. Um, as we apply these principles to our how we run our household finances, what's your advice on meeting and reporting, and how should that look when we're trying to do this at home?
Right. Let's talk about that for a second from the perspective of maybe the person who is more the money person. One one mistake I made very early on was I wanted to have budget meetings, and I wanted to bring my spreadsheet to the budget meetings, and I wanted to talk about every little thing, going, 2 years backwards and 5 years forward in my spreadsheet. And my wife would get this look on her face. You can imagine the look she she got on her face. I don't think I need to describe it. And it was obvious that, saying, let's have a budget meeting was pretty much like asking her to repeat the most boring class that she took in high school over and over and over again. It was not working. So, as far as meetings and communication, it does need to take place. But I think if you're a person who is more inclined and more of a money person, realize that those conversations are probably going to have to take place on a higher level than maybe what you're thinking when you're working on things by yourself. Again, you have to find that right tone for right people. I know some people, some advice out there would say, well, you have a monthly budget meeting. That might work for some people. And if you're doing something very targeted in your life, let's say you're trying to get out of debt and you want to be out of debt in 2 years, it may require a little bit more rigor for that season. But generally speaking, that's something that you and your partner need to work out in terms of what's enough, but what's not onerous to that other person. What's the level that we can hold meetings at and the frequency of meetings, and still everybody stays engaged. And that's just something you just have to find through trial and error.
Now, as you have walked this out, as you have helped others walk this out, is there a difference that you see in between those who walk this out successfully and those who never quite accomplish what they set out to accomplish?
I think that there are a lot of different reasons, but if I were to come up with a common reason that separates those who succeed versus those who don't, believe it or not, it really is having that vision that can keep the two of you together. Because particularly if you're going on a longer journey, let's say you have accumulated debt and you need to work your way out of that debt, um, in order to achieve your next goal and your next goal, there are going to be, days, weeks, maybe month where that is just not fun. So you have to be able to keep focused on your long-term goal, and you have to stay together on this thing. There are times when you may have to slow it down a bit. You may even need to take a break in the middle of particularly something, like I said, that's intense, like, oh, we're going to reduce debt. Because what you can't do is you can't lose that other person. So the whole process may not work as quickly as I would like. But if I start pressing it and really hammering it, I'm going to lose that other person. End of story. So the people that I see that are most successful are sensitive to that. And it's just really a matter of just making sure that everybody stays on the same page, even if it takes a little longer to get to the goal than you originally thought.
Are there any other conversations that you would want us to write down? And even if it's not a conversation we have right now, but like a list of conversations that we should have at some point when it comes to our finances. I know we're going to start off by dreaming and coming up with goals and use that to inform what maybe our next move or our next focus should be. But as we grow and as we mature, are there some things that you, the originator of the CFO at home movement, will say, hey, make sure you take a look at this. Make sure that you all talk about this. Here's something you should consider having a conversation about down the road as well.
Yeah, I think once the foundation is laid, once you have those common goals, once you understand one another's money story, and once you're really rolling, that there are financial areas, frankly, that are more fun to talk about than others, or more energizing to talk about than others, because debt's an interesting thing. There's so much emotion built up around it that you may hate it when you start, but you can kind of get into it and yeah, we're in a fight, we're winning and all that. And there's kind of a certain drama to that. You can dream about retirement and that you can make that very sexy. It's a little harder to make insurance sexy. It's a little bit more, it's a little more difficult to make, making sure that you have a proper estate plan sexy. So I would say that once you get to a certain point where you have those basics taken care of and you've got a plan, don't forget that you're really planning for your life. Ideally, you are planning for a legacy. So it's going to get into those things that may not be as much fun and sexy, but that insurance under the right circumstances, that life insurance that nobody wants to think about, that will that nobody wants to think about, those are the things that you have to make sure that you push through and eventually have in your full-blown financial plan.
I want to make sure nobody leaves. I want to make sure that everybody leaves out of here ready to take action. So let's rewind just a little bit. When you say make sure you have the basics done, or that you're at least addressing or conversating about the basics, let us know exactly what you want us to be addressing when it comes to that group of conversations, the conversations around the basics of our financial situation.
Yeah, I would say the basics start with a budget. That really helps you to kind of assess where you are, and everything else comes out of that budget. That's going to reveal a lot of things. That's going to reveal how your income, supports your goals. Because if you really go through your budget and you find that, hey, at the end of the day, I have enough to pay the bills, and I have enough to go month to month, but I don't have enough to properly, fund my retirement, then that's when you take a deeper dive into that budget, and ultimately you may have to even look at your sources of income. That's when you're going to look and realize how much of your monthly cash flow is being taken up by servicing debt. That's where it all, that's where the magic begins. That's where the story of your financial life starts to unfold. So I would say the budget, if you're not budgeting, that's the fundamental starting point.
All right. Now, if people want to continue on keeping up with you and the information that you give as they attempt to become a CFO at home, how do they find you on the internet?
All right. Easiest way to do that is go to thecfoathome.com. I am also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the usual suspects, but thecfoathome.com. If you go there, it'll open up the floodgates to all of that, the podcast and everything else.
Now, as we get ready to wrap this thing up, if somebody is wanting to become a CFO at home, a little unsure if they have what it takes to make it their reality, what words of encouragement would you offer to that person if you had a chance to talk to them?
Well, again, number one is the fact that you're listening to a podcast like this. That shows that you have the desire. It shows that you have the consciousness to get this thing done. And the thing is, even though people say it's math and I'm good with money, the math is not really that difficult. The math is not the thing. It's the motivation and the desire and the interest and the awareness that's the difference. So I would say to anybody listening to this conversation, if you've listened to this conversation, if you're a regular listener to shows like His and Her Money, then you have what it takes to do this. That's the great thing about the wonderful world of podcasts. There is no lack of information out there, and like I said, if you're a listener, you're there. So don't doubt yourself because of your past. Don't doubt yourself because your aunt told you you're not good with money. You're there. You can do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Can't say thank you enough, Vince, for coming by the His and Her Money Show and dropping your wisdom and knowledge on us today. Thank you, good sir.
Talent. Enjoyed it. Thanks.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show is in the books. I hope you took good notes, and I hope you're ready to take some good action. Remember, we have a ton of information just like this at our website, hisandhermoney.com. Everything that Vince mentioned today, including how to get in touch with him, you can find down in the show notes of this episode. And if you haven't done so, and you've been listening and you haven't left us a review, please do so. We need those 5-star reviews. Why? Because it lets other people know that this is a show that they should tune into. And our goal here is to help as many people as we possibly can. So thank you in advance for leaving us a review. That's all we got for this time, guys. It's been great. Until next time, peace.